thank you for coming. And apologies that the room isn't larger. Next year we'll know. And welcome to spring or summer, whichever. It's so hot in here. We will leave the back doors open so that we get a little bit of breeze, but feel free to take off your coats, and it's pretty warm in here. So, welcome to everyone joining us here in the hearing room. Welcome to everybody on Zoom. And big thank you to Minuteman Media, who will be recording this. So if you don't have a chance to, you can tell your friends and neighbors that they can see this. It'll be posted on the League website. Speaking of posting things, as you know, this recording is the League's recording, and none of it can, the candidates have already agreed to this. It can't be excerpted for candidates' campaigns. It must be used in its entirety. I'm Nancy Comfrey. I'm the host of the event, and myself and Emily Wheeler are the co-chairs of voter service for the League of Women Voters. Sue Flykop, who you will meet in just a moment, will be our moderator today. She's from Wayland. So no town league people will be moderating the questions. We have 3 sections this morning or this afternoon. We're going to start with our uncontested candidate, Carmen Reese, who will tell us about, everyone's used to seeing her in front of us for long, long periods of time. So we wanted to get you in the mood for town meeting. The questions, thank you to everybody who prepared questions in advance. Sorry. Diane, can you come here, and Maya, you can. Thank you for submitting questions. We had more than we could take. If you don't hear your question asked, there are cards and pencils that were handed out at the beginning. If you need a card or pencil, put up your hand. If you have a question already and you want it collected, we have 2 wonderful volunteers who are picking up those cards and will bring them to the table to be asked by the moderator. For the first section, though, with the town moderator, we will just be passing a microphone if we have time for questions. That will be a very brief time. So, the timers are in the front row. The candidates already know that. There's Diane waving her thing. And then it's good. A little levity gets everyone relaxed. And with that, I'm going to introduce Carmen. And Carmen, you can take it away. Tell us what the town meeting study committee recommended.
Well, thank you very much. Upon learning of the Boston Tea Party in 1775, Lord Germain, who was appointed by the king to be the Secretary of State for the colonies, is reported to have observed, "This is what comes of their wretched town meetings. These are the proceedings of a tumultuous and riotous rabble who ought, if they had the least prudence, to follow their mercantile employment and not trouble themselves with politics and government, which they do not understand." Notwithstanding the disdain of the crown, Concord, with its tumultuous and riotous rabble, like many other New England towns, has persisted in a tradition of local governance by open town meeting, allowing our citizens to have the greatest degree of self-determination available in any form of government. My name is Carmen Reese, and I have been privileged to serve as the moderator of our town meeting for 9 terms, and I'm now asking for your support for a 10th and final term. I'm grateful to the League for once again hosting this candidates forum. It's a great service to us all. And since I'm by now a fairly well-known quantity to most folks in Concord, I'm going to use my time this afternoon to tell you a little bit about what's going to be new at this year's annual town meeting. The Town Meeting Study Committee, which was formed by 2024 annual town meeting, has been hard at work since last summer, and will be presenting its report and recommendations to adaptations to town meeting at this year's meeting. I am working with the Select Board and town staff to implement some of the committee's recommendations for the upcoming meeting. The first will be electronic voting. As recommended by the Town Meeting Study Committee and supported by the Select Board, we'll be voting using clickers at town meeting this year. At check-in, we'll have a handout on clicker operation, practice votes and vendor tech support on site. At check-in, we'll be distributing both clickers and the usual brightly colored voting placards. They will be our backup system if we need one. The Select Board will be making a preliminary motion on the first night of town meeting to adopt a rule of the meeting to use clickers for votes under articles, that is, for motions or amendments to motions, generally speaking, but not on preliminary and procedural motions. Those are motions for no new business after a certain time, or to call the question. This motion, which does follow the Town Meeting Study Committee's recommendation, will be deliberated and voted upon by the meeting. Next, we will have some significant changes in how town meeting information is provided to voters this year. The warrant will initially be published as an insert later this month to the Concord Bridge, which will be delivered to every household. There will be more in-depth information on all of the articles posted simultaneously, actually a little bit in advance, under the 2025 Town Meeting tab on our town's website. This year, the website is going to have a folder for every article, which will contain the article, explanatory materials, the motion that's to be made under the article, and ultimately the recommendations that are made by our boards and committees. There will be a town meeting briefing book this year. This is one of the recommendations of the Town Meeting Study Committee. It will be mailed to every household a couple of weeks in advance of town meeting. It's going to have the warrant, explanatory materials, the Finance Committee report, the motions to be presented at town meeting, the consent calendar, information on any pre-scheduled high-interest articles, board and committee recommendations, and all the usual logistical information about attending town meeting. And I will note that for accessibility purposes, this year for the first time, we will have, courtesy of the Council on Aging, some walkers and a couple of wheelchairs available for people to make the distances from the curb into the seats in the auditorium. Everyone's going to be asked to bring their briefing book to town meeting. Part of the idea of this briefing book is to eliminate the myriad individual handouts that we typically have at the meeting. You will be able to download the briefing book in advance from the town meeting website onto your iPad or your computer and bring that to the meeting as well. This year also we'll be working with Minuteman Media Network to develop some short videos that will be explanations of, for example, electronic voting, accessibility at town meeting, explanations of various articles, and so on. So watch for those. Those will be out and publicized. Another significant change this year is the time for annual town meeting. We're moving it up a half an hour. We will begin the meeting at 6:30 this year. So, and that's with the idea of taking up no new business after 9:30. And it's the hope that that earlier window will make it easier for people who don't like a late night and for parents who've got to get home to the babysitter. So that's the hope. So please be aware that town meeting will be starting a half an hour earlier this year. And finally, we will have an article on the warrant this year for town meeting to authorize the Select Board to request the General Court for special legislation that would allow Concord to implement remote participation, including voting, at town meeting. We'll be joining the town of Wayland in requesting that special legislation, and there is also a broader bill pending before the legislature, which would give every town that option if they chose to take it. Clearly there would be, this is the first step in a long journey. So it has to get through the legislature, and we have to be very confident that we have all of the technology and the security we need, and we have to understand the logistics of doing this. So this is the beginning of a course which perhaps would make town meeting more accessible to more people. So that's all I have to say, and I would be delighted to answer questions about town meeting process or any of the changes that the Town Meeting Study Committee has come up with.
Any questions for Carmen? Wow. Oh.
Cynthia Wood, I have two questions. They're both short. Will there be enough briefing books for every voter? I.e. not one per household, but for each voter in the household?
No, the plan is that one briefing book will go to each household. And since they will be available on the website and people will be able to download them or print them themselves, that is the plan. It's the same as what we do with the warrant. And in recent years, there haven't been additional copies of the warrant or the Finance Committee report available at town meeting. The town has only printed enough in order to get those out to every household.
I know, and that's been a problem. And then the other issue is if you download it, is there going to be internet availability at the high school? Which has also been a problem in the past.
Certainly, last year was an aberration. We've typically had Wi-Fi access at the high school, but I will say that if one downloads the briefing book, you don't need Wi-Fi for it because it's on your device. It's on your iPad or it's on your computer, so you need no connection in order to be able to follow along in the briefing book if you have printed it or downloaded it to a device.
One more question? We have time for one more question. I think that's good then. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you all.
With this, I'd like to introduce Sue Flykop, who is our moderator from the Wayland today, League of Women Voters. Sue, come up, and we'd like the school committee candidates to come up as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Flykop. I'm from the League of Women Voters in Wayland, where we do have the clickers at our town meeting, I will say. So welcome. We're going to focus on the school committee first. We have 3 candidates for 2 seats. We have Alexa Anderson, Sandy Pishardi, and Michael Williams. And we are going to start with opening statements in alphabetical order. They'll have a minute each for an opening statement. We'll go through a series of questions, one question that all 3 candidates will answer. They'll have a minute for that. And then at the end, we'll have closing statements that are also a minute. There is a little bit of time for audience questions. So I know Nancy mentioned if you have a question to put it on a postcard, one of those index cards, and sort of wave your hand. And the team here will let me know which are the questions that we should add toward the end. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with opening statements, 1 minute each, and Alexa, we'll go to you first.
Hi, everyone. Thank you first to the League of Women Voters for having us all today. It's so encouraging to see a full house. Democracy is at least winning in Concord. I am Alexa Anderson. I was raised in Concord. I was educated in Concord, and I have returned to Concord to raise my family. My education in Concord was incredibly impactful to me. And for me, being on the school committee is the most profound and impactful way that I can give back. As an individual, I benefited from our excellent schools, and to me, being on the school committee is a way that I can ensure that that excellence is stewarded for generations of Concord students to come.
Thank you. And Sandeep, minute to you.
All right, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the League, thank you to my fellow candidates, and all of you for participating in this process. I'm a proud parent of 2 kids at Thoreau Elementary School, and I understand what profound trust it means for me to ask for your vote. I'm going to share 3 things about myself to show you that I'm worthy of that trust. First off, I push boundaries for excellence. With a PhD and multiple years of work experience at MIT Lincoln Lab, I have always challenged the status quo with both data and rational arguments. These are skills I will bring to the school committee. Second, I celebrate authentic identity. I'm a first-generation immigrant, and I will strive to make sure that every child in the Concord school system feels welcome and feels accepted for who they are. I got my 15-second timer, so I'm going to wrap up the third one real quick. I believe in community action, and that starts with listening to folks. I'm the son of an educator, and we'll strive to make sure that the schools work with the community to make progress. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael, 1 minute to you.
Thank you. I'm Michael Williams, child of Solomon and Naomi, butler, maid, homemaker, Pullman porter. They had an abiding belief that education was the key to the door to one's future. I took that key to open the door to a career in medicine, a career in surgery. My practice brought us across the country in many different states, but we came here to Concord to raise and educate our children. I want to be able to do, now that our children are out of school and into their lives, with my wife, I want to be able to bring to the school committee the things that the school did for our children. Educational excellence, I want to use my skills to bring that. Looking at the data to make our good schools better. And finally, using my communication skills to bring information from the community to the administration, from the administration to the community, all focused toward making our schools better. Thank you for the opportunity that the League of Women Voters has given us and given me the opportunity to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to launch right into our questions. So Sandeep, you're going to go first on this one. Do you think it is possible to reduce the costs of our schools while improving outcomes? If so, what are some concrete ways we could go about that?
All right, starting with the easy question, I see. There is a definite correlation between the amount of money you spend versus the outcomes you get. But as a part of the Concord Ed Fund, which I have been, for multiple years now, and as part of the PTG, which I've been a board member of, I've seen how you can add enrichment programming without tapping into the school budgets. There are ways we can reach into grants, education grants, to maybe offset some of the costs. All of this to say that, yes, it is possible to keep achieving the same level of excellence that we have in our school districts while making sure that all of the resources we have are invested wisely and distributed equitably. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael, the question to you.
So I think that there's ways that we can look at how our dollars are being spent and look at how they're allocated to make certain that we're getting what we need for our dollars to all our students. 3 things go into making excellent education. High-level expectations, high-level materials, and we're a community with great largesse, we can deliver that, but high-level support. I think perhaps looking at how that funding is allocated to make certain that we give the people that are at the front end, the people that have boots on the ground, our educators, the tools that they need to deliver excellence to our students every day. So we can do that, and we can possibly do that more smartly by how we allocate the funds we have. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexa, the question to you.
Great. Yes, we currently do exactly that every year when we examine our annual budgets. We're always looking for efficiencies. I can talk a little bit about what we did this year. We use an incredible amount of data that we synthesize annually. I say we, I really mean the administration in our partnership role as a school committee member. And for example, this year, we examined data from our student outcomes that were improving in areas that had been adversely impacted by the pandemic. We're year 2, 3, 4 out of the pandemic. We saw major improvements in especially the early elementary years, where we had, in fact, used monies to increase our FTE count so kids would have more one-on-one interventions so that the learning loss that they experienced would boost right up. This year, because we look at the data every year, we've seen that we have made those tangible improvements, and now this year, in the coming budget, you will see those FTE counts, for example, have been reduced.
Okay, thank you. Michael, this next question is to you. A minute. Suppose that a parent or group of parents come to the school committee with a very strongly held view about specific books that they would like removed from the school library shelves. What do you think is the right way for the school committee to handle this situation?
Thank you for that. I think when any parent groups comes to the school committee or to the administration, they want to have an understanding that they would be attended, acknowledged, and that the committee would then do their due deliberation and make a decision. So I would not in any way restrict their access. I would listen to their complaint or their comments, and then in a studied, judge fashion, come to a decision that is in accordance with our community's nature, our community's findings, our community's goals, and where we stand. So I would want them to feel that they had been attended, acknowledged, and then we do our due deliberation, understanding the position and the focus, the nature of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexa, the question to you?
Sure. So we've lived through this. 2 years ago on the school committee, we did have some local groups coming to us specifically asking us to ban certain texts and their access at the libraries. And what a good school committee does is ensure that they have robust, detailed, and very clear policies. So we always rest upon our policies. It's interesting. I think sometimes people think the school committees have this expansive power and we're going to be able to do all this stuff for each individual resident. Our power is actually quite constricted and narrow, but policy is one area that we can have tremendous impact. So in that instance, when we were approached by these different groups, we immediately referenced our policy. We immediately came together, re-examined that policy, made it more robust so that we can ensure that we are consistent in how we deal with exactly episodes like that.
Okay, thank you. And Sandeep, 1 minute to you.
So going third is easier. Michael, everything you said, I completely agree with, right? We need to make sure that any parent that is bringing any issue, this is an issue I think most people here will agree on, but any parent group bringing an issue should have a forum in front of the school committee to address that. That being said, it's the job of the committee to listen to everyone. Everyone has different lived experiences. I think the three folks in this table have different lived experiences. We need to consider all of those. It's the job of the committee to then consider thoughtfully and then act deliberately. I applaud what the school committee has done in the past when they were faced with this issue.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question, Alexa, you're going to go first. Do you think the school committee has a responsibility to actively promote sustainability and climate resilience in the school environment and reflected in the school budget? If no, why not? And if yes, what specifically would you propose the school committee focus on in this area?
Sure. We've actually had an incredible amount of discussion on this topic if you look back over the past 3 or 4 years. And what is tricky, I think it is undeniable that I would say that one of the biggest conversations we are having in Concord is the stewardship of our financial resources and how do we do that responsibly, which can sometimes come in conflict, sadly, with our values. And I know as a community, we really do value sustainability. One of the things that we've been talking about at the school committee level is creating a stronger partnership with the town of Concord so that we can create a larger plan that incorporates all of the needs of the town, not just school buildings. So I am thinking that soon you are going to see that partnership come to life and create some kind of master plan that allows us to be more efficient and more collaborative in our planning around this issue, because it is something I know that we all do value.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, the question to you next.
Yes, I think it's pretty clear that the school committee is a partner and a portion of our community. A combined working relationship with Department of Public Works, Select Board, FinCom, and school committee is necessary to come together with a plan that all can agree on that, again, speak to the needs, the ethos of our community. Our community is heavily invested in sustainability, and that can be reflected in our budget, our planning, and done jointly with all the stakeholders.
Thank you. And Sandeep, 1 minute to you.
Right, so Concord has been a world leader in sustainability and sustainability efforts, and the schools have to play a major role in continuing that tradition. The responsibility of the schools is I guess, more on the education leadership that they can provide for sustainability, but at the same time partner with the town, collaborate with the town. There have been the solar task forces that have been, multiple green teams, determine how we can work on having more electric modes of transportation, more for the town. What's the town roadmap, and how can the school partner with the town to get there? As part of the PTG, which I mentioned before, thorough PTG, we have worked with the schools to make sure that we do our part in educating and helping with the sustainability efforts, at least at Thorough. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sandeep, you're up next for the next question.
Let's go.
Suppose the federal funding to the state is reduced and it causes a significant decrease in educational funding in Concord. How would you propose the school committee handle this possibility?
Thank you for that question. That's something I've been dealing with my day job. We are extremely fortunate that we live in a town where education is valued so much. It's well funded. We are in a much better place than many maybe surrounding school districts and definitely in other states, right? From what I understand, the cut in federal spending for education will impact our budget 1.8%. It is up to the town, and I know this town values education, to go fill that gap and be able to continue to provide the excellent services that we've been providing for the students. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we don't fail to honor the commitment that we have to them.
Thank you. And Alexa, the question to you next.
Yeah, sure. This abstraction could become more of a reality than we think, sooner than we think. So we have been having these very discussions on the school committee, and I think Sandeep brought up the very good news that we're a fairly well-resourced community, and the fact that we actually don't receive a great deal of federal funding because of that. So our impact will certainly be significantly less than a lot of communities in Massachusetts that are not as well resourced as we are. In terms of the challenges that we have here, we are really fortunate too that we have these incredible public-private partnerships with organizations like the Ed Fund, like our PTGs, that have been very generous so far in supplementing innovation and good experiences for our children in the schools. So I would encourage greater participation, involvement, and collaboration with those organizations.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, 1 minute to you.
Interesting point, and I agree with my colleagues. I think the point to be mindful of, though, is that all funding is state and locally generated. The 1.2 to 1.8% that our superintendent had mentioned, it's certainly going to be real and it certainly can be felt, but we would lead on this with who we are as a community. We would lead on this because our task is to educate all, our task is to support all, and that's something we'd have to dig deep to do, but it's something that is part of our ethos and something that we'd find. We also, on the other edicts that may come federally or may not, we also need to remind our community, our school community, that we are there for the most threatened, the most potentially victimized by this, and that we can stand up to support them.
Thank you. All right, our next question. Alexa, you'll be first. Many of the questions submitted to the League for School Committee candidates focused on concerns with the relationship of the school administration and the committee to the community. Examples people gave included the process of naming the middle school, the willingness to engage in the town's climate action plan, and communication regarding MECO issues. Does the relationship between the schools and the town concern you? And if so, how might this be addressed?
Sure. So again, I think a lot of times people have somewhat a misunderstanding of exactly the powers of the school committee. And I always say, spoiler alert, it's more limited than you think. That being said, we do value our community input. We ensure that we are open and available to the community beyond even just public comment in our meetings. We've hosted series this year and in years past, community coffees, to ensure that voters, citizens and taxpayers in all of our communities, Concord, Carlisle, and Boston, have direct access to us so that we can have productive dialogue. And, for us, I think we always need to make sure that we are looking at everything through the lens of student achievement and student wellness. And that is always our chief priority to the constituents we represent, ensuring that that is what we're focused on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Sandeep, you're next. One
All right,
minute.
this is excellent because I get to finish the part of my opening statement which I couldn't. All right. As Alexa pointed out, that communication is very important, right? We need to engage continuously with the town, with the FinCom, with the select board at all times. It starts with being able to listen to everyone. Whether or not it's true, if that perception exists, it is true for many people, right? So we need to make sure we listen to those people, try and find out why they feel the way they're feeling, and work to remedy those. It starts with listening first. You can't shake hands with a clenched fist. We'll open our hands. We'll go talk to people and work with them. That's the only way to make progress.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, the question to you.
I agree that communication is key, and would remind everyone that everyone here in this room, whether you have children in this school or not, you're the constituents of the school committee. And so when you bring a concern, it's actually part of the school committee's charge to be the conduit for information from the community to the administration, for information from the administration to the community. Now, I've had over several hundred conversations with community members, both with children in the schools and without, and families with children in the schools can have information overload from the number of missives that they're getting. Parents, citizens with their children out of the school can have a dearth of information. Getting information to everybody in a manageable fashion is something that is part of our charge, so we can have a good mix of ideas and ultimately come to a good decision for our students and for our community. And that's something I advocate for strongly on the committee.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, you're up next for the next question. So don't sit back. Just... I saw you lean back.
At least take a breath.
Okay. The current practice for response to public comment during school committee meetings is to make no response. School committee members sit silently after public comment is given. What do you think of the effectiveness of this practice, and would you advocate for a change?
This, I think, sort of dovetails on what I was just talking about in terms of being the conduit for communication from community to administration, from administration to community. And I can certainly understand, I believe the select board had a First Amendment meeting on communication that addressed exactly this topic. And I can understand that a school committee or a select board meeting is a business meeting. And I can understand it needs to be organized so that business can take place. But it also, the committee has as part of its charge to make certain that the necessary information gets out to the community, the necessary information feedback gets back to the administration. So there can be ways to do that. We have a wonderful resource in Minuteman Media, podcasts, going out to the community, sitting in Club Car Cafe and saying, this is what your school committee has done. Mechanisms to push information out so our citizens can get them and understand the things that we do that are great.
Okay, thank you. And Sandeep, the question to you.
Yeah, so I understand why the not the policy, what's the word I'm looking for?
Public comment.
Public comment. The process, sorry, English is not my first language, sometimes I struggle. What the process is, why it is, I understand that, people need a forum to share what their thoughts are. If there are, say, 50 of us want to share one topic, and then there is one person who needs to share a different topic, everybody needs a space to come and share that. So I completely am on board with not responding to the comments while they're delivered. But that feedback loop needs to be completed, whether it's a written response or a response at some point. Maybe, as Michael pointed out, it's in a digest. Maybe it's in some mode of communication with the community, so people can see that this question was asked and there is a certain response. But completely on board with the process right now.
Okay, thank you. And Alexa, the question to you.
My short answer is we do have strong policy about this, and with good reason. I don't know how many of you used to tune into our meetings in the 2021 school year. Sometimes our meetings would be 5 hours. So I think that the policy of the non-response is to ensure that, in fact, we can get through the requisite business that we need to cover. That being said, the school committee does have other effective means to collect data and have a dialogue. First and foremost would be forums. Forums are a different type of meeting. They're not a business meeting, with the express purpose to gather feedback on important topics that the school committee might be considering. An example of a forum that I think you will see soon is on on cell phone policy. So that's another way that we can have dialogue. And again, I reference our community coffees. Come to them. They're not well attended. So we have to have two-way participation to make that all work.
Thank you. Okay. Sandeep, next question. There was a well-publicized rift between school committee members and MECO representatives to the school committee. What do you think the school committee should be doing, if anything, to address the issue?
So I hate answering questions like this because it is me speculating on what was done. I do not really have insight into the actions that the school committee did. From everything I have seen, they have extended a hand. They've been trying to work. Now, I'm going to answer a hypothetical question. If I was on the board, what we would have done, right? That maybe I can answer with certain more confidence. Concord has long been a part of the METCO program. It's something we should be really proud of. It's something we have invested a lot of money in, and we maybe are not seeing a universally positive message being spread about that. So it's important to understand where that disconnect is, where that discontent is, and address that. Whether it's engagement, stepping up engagement with the parents. Maybe what we were doing until now is not enough. Maybe trying a different way to connect to the parents, to the administrators, to whoever we are hearing these messages from, going to the root, I think would be the issue, or the solution to the issue.
Thank you. Michael, a question to you.
So we've heard from the CEO of METCO Inc. that Concord has supported the METCO program financially. They're supported with buses. But we've also had the information from the parents who, through the withdrawal of the METCO PTG, feel that the largesse may work for a program, but that program, where it filters down to their students, isn't. We need to understand that the parents, that the 123 rather families that send their children here, want the same thing for their children that we who live here want for ours. And somewhere in that equation, there seems to be room for improvement. And so I think that a dialogue to understand why the METCO PTG left, dialogue to address the gaps that are seen academically, if we look at our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education data, and show that we have good faith to address those, might go a long way to rebuilding the faith and the trust that's been lost.
Okay, thank you. And Alexa, the question to you.
Sure. So I would characterize my relationship with one of our METCO reps that is still remaining as very close. And so one of the things that she has taught me over her tenure in the past couple of years is that even when you disaggregate demographics and refer to METCO families as METCO families, they too are diverse. They are not all like-minded. So again, I think we go back to data here. In our most recent survey, 78% of METCO families are in fact satisfied with their child's experience here, their sense of belonging. That does leave 22% of families that aren't having that experience. But what is interesting about that data is it does closely track with our larger population. So all of the same things must be done. We need to listen, collaborate, and communicate better and more strongly, and we will, I think, continue to experience some movement in the right direction.
Thank you. All right, Michael, this next question is to you first. Please give your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Concord schools.
I think that dovetails on the last question too, actually. I think that our community's ethos, again, says who we are and what we're about, and we've been forward-thinking for over 250 years. That said, there's still room for improvement. If I connect this to our last question, there are so many gaps that may not cost any funding to address that could help to ease the rift that was discussed before and help to also bolster the confidence and diversity, equity, inclusion that our community speaks toward. If we look at proficiency, third graders read at 62% proficiency. If you're low income, that number is closer to 17%. And that's being fifth in the state. If we address those and show that those things that we're doing are done to lift all boats, it can help to ensure, comfort the parents that come from all different demographics that we're trying to improve all.
Thank you. Alexa, the question to you next.
Yeah, sure. DEI has been one of the most talked about issues that the school committee has debated and discussed in the past few years that I've been on the school committee, and that is with really good reason. I believe that we are showing that we do value DEIB. Personally, for me, the B is what resonates most. When you're talking about student populations, you want to ensure that those kids feel like they belong. And you know, when we face budget constraints, for example, I just want to make sure everybody knows that, like, so much of what we fight for annually with our finance committee members when we're talking about those budgets are to ensure that we have the necessary resources for our populations on the margins. And I'll be fast. What is really important to me is you don't hear a lot of talk in Concord schools about academic achievement because it's just built into the fabric of what we do. And we're doing that with DEI, and it takes time.
Okay, thank you. And Sandeep?
All right, so first, I have a few data points here that I'm going to share, and then I'll get to my main point. 27% of our students are in the district are students of color. 20% of the students are students with disabilities. 10% of the students are low-income students. 2% of the students don't have English as a primary language. We need to make sure that every one of the children, right, in this bracket feels like the school system is there to enable them to succeed. A lot of that is on the school district, but the belonging part that Alexa mentioned, I think it's more than just the schools. I think it's the town, it's the community. When the CCHS has a Lunar New Year Fest, it's great, brings the community together. When the DEI Commission had organized the Concord Pride Fest, great, brings the community together. I was inspired by these. I started the Concord Friends of India last year. We had a Jolly Fest. This guy joined. It was awesome. Those are the kind of things we need.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have some questions from the audience. I've got 4 questions from the audience. I'm trying to fit them all in about 15 minutes. So.
Certainly.
Okay, so Alexa, this next question to you. How would you handle anti-Semitism in the school?
It is extraordinary to me, the rise in anti-Semitism that we have seen since October 7th. And it is really challenging because we have disenfranchised groups that we expect and that we have prioritized. When we, for example, brought in our director of DEIB, it was very clear to us, like this was a initiative and a position that was filled because there was such a sense of urgency in 2020, specifically after the murder of George Floyd. And we knew we're going to prioritize our Black and brown students in this work. And there was broad agreement on that. Now things are more complicated, and I think we do need to do a little bit of a deeper dive into which other populations are feeling marginalized and ensure that they're being properly supported.
Okay, thank you. Sandeep, a question, the question to you, same question.
Right. This is again a subject that I need to get smarter on. So I'm going to tell you what I really think, where there's room for improvement. From what I understand, the protocol that was followed by the school district, and I think it was all Lori's, if I'm not wrong, was exactly what was laid out. So they've checked all the boxes, right? But the question remains whether that is all we need to do. Is that the best we can do? I don't know the answer to that. I think a lot of that will be talking to the communities affected. We need to reach out to the Jewish community in town and find out if our actions sufficient. If not, what would you want us to, what additional thing would you want us to do to make you feel like you're valued in this town and that we are rooting for your success and that you're one of us?
Thank you. And Michael, a question to you.
So I think this question actually speaks to who we are as a community and what our ethos is. This is not something that you necessarily need to fight for money for, something that you need to work with FinCom for. This is something that states to who we are. I know of districts, our surrounding municipalities, where we make a statement that goes beyond saying this is not who we are. Anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist comments, they're not tolerated. There's not a place for that in our community. And then you can work with the faith groups. You can work with the various different groups that support to make it clear, to make a statement not just to the school community, but to the community at large. This is what we stand for. This is who we are. And behaviors that are contrary to that have no place in this community. A strong statement is what is needed.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question, Sandeep, you're going to be first. How will you work with the superintendent, and how do you see your role on the school committee?
All right, so I had some time to think about this. I've had the chance to work with Lori in the past in my capacity, the thorough PTG. I've had discussions with her prior to deciding whether I was going to run to see if this is a relationship I could build on. The way I look at the relationship between the committee and the superintendent is one where we are obviously there to oversee the work. We're there to hold her or whoever the superintendent is accountable. But at the same time, we are all in this same boat together. We are rowing to make sure our kids have a better future. So the questions that are going to be asked are going to be constructive. It's to identify where the gaps are so we can build on it. It's not necessarily to tear down any of the great work that she's doing. It's to find out where the room for improvement is and how we can get there.
Okay, thank you. And Alexa, the question to you next.
Sure. I think any good relationship, especially a working relationship, has to be built upon trust. And trust is something that needs to be earned. I took my time earning the trust of the superintendent. And what that has earned me, which is also, I think, why it's really important that I get an opportunity to finish my work, is that I have her confidence so that when I make recommendations that she disagrees with, she really considers it. And I think that communication style in this instance is really important. I'm fortunate that I have a good communication style that is complementary to that of the superintendent. So we have been able to work together so that I can hold her to account and ensure that the lens of the work that she does is through ensuring student achievement and wellness.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, a question to you.
I see the relationship between the school committee and superintendent as the same as the relationship between a board of directors and a CEO. We look at budget, we look at policy, we look at planning, we set benchmarks. And I would agree that trust and a common goal, since we are all pulling on the same oar to have that cruise shall go in the direction down the river, we all want for the good of our students, for the good of our community, for things to succeed. But it's the mix of having a healthy tension, that change of getting good ideas cast back and forth that ultimately leads to a excellent decision to service our students in our community. I think that the ability to have that dialogue and to have that kind of interaction is necessary.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, you've got the next question up first.
Take a breath first.
What is the gap in grade 8 MCAS reading proficiency, and what can you or will you do to close it?
So, grade 3 proficiency gap.
I think it was grade 8.
Grade 8?
Yep,
Okay, grade 8
MCAS reading
proficiency gap is about 72% of students are proficient, according to the last Department of Elementary and Secondary Education data. That means that nearly 30% of our students are not proficient by grade 8. If we look at that broken down, if you're low income, that number goes down to about 20%, maybe 28%. And it's not clear that you need to spend more money to do that. 3 ingredients go into effective teaching that lifts all boats: having high quality expectations, having high quality materials, and that shouldn't be an issue for us, but also having the nurturing, high quality support where the instructor approaches the student, where our teachers approach the student and say, "We've got the materials, we've got the high expectations, and I'll be with you to do that." That is something that has been proven to lift the boat.
Thank you.
All
And
boats.
Sandeep, the question to you.
Right, so we are not where we need to be in literacy standards, and actually, to that point, even math standards. We can compare ourselves to our neighboring towns, but look at us globally. We're not where we should be. There is a lot of room for improvement, and as Michael rightly pointed out, this is a system where the educators, my mom's an educator, and that was drilled into me, the whole time I was a child. You're not lecturing the students, right? You're working with the students to make sure that everybody can read up to or do math up to the standards that they need to do to be successful in a global economy.
Okay, thank you. And Alexa, question to you.
Sure. So with literacy, you need to have an incredibly strong foundation. I recently said, I think in response to one of the questions in the bridge, in K-2, you learn to read. After grade 3, you read to learn. So without a strong foundation in early literacy, it has really a domino effect everywhere. You can't excel even in our STEM courses at the high school without a really strong reading foundation. The way I'm looking around, the way we all did math as children is so different now. There is so much language skill involved in having success in STEM because, we're not just carrying ones anymore. We're substantiating everything we do, and we explain our thinking, and that is all verbal. So we are investing a lot more in early literacy. You will see that in this rollouts in the coming years, and I think that's a big win for the district.
Okay, thank you. Alexa, you're going first. Next question.
Great.
Sit forward. What do you believe makes our school district unique, and how would you build upon those strengths?
Sure. I'll start with an anecdote. I am nearly 50, and I still maintain friendships, like real friendships, where I have their phone numbers in my phone of many teachers I had, specifically at Concord Carlisle High School. I think that is unique. These are educators that impacted me so profoundly, I couldn't let them go when I left for college. And I do think, as I look at the educators at CCHS, we have preserved that tradition. There is magic there that I don't think happens everywhere else. And how that is fostered is we give our teachers a great amount of latitude to do what they need to do to reach children and give them all the tools they have to succeed. And our outcomes, when you do look specifically at the high school, where we rank in SAT scores, AP scores, where kids go to college, we really, really are strong there. And it's so important to me that we preserve that.
Okay, thank you. Michael, the question to you.
So I think I've got about 20 years on you, Alexa. and I have my 8th grade biology teachers number, and her husband. He was my high school speech coach. I did interscholastic speech and debate. So that's a way of saying that we are and we aren't unique. What we're talking about is what our educators do. And the quality that our educators demonstrate, I would hope that all excellent educators demonstrate in their venue. I know mine did for me. That's why I'm still in touch with them. These are people that I love. The thing we should cherish, the thing we should protect, is to make certain that we give the tools to our educators that they need so they can do that. Because that made a difference in my life. I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you if they didn't do that for me.
Thank you. And Sandeep, the question to you.
So when I moved here 8 or so years ago, we were looking at a lot of towns around us. The reason Concord jumped to the top of the list was we do a great job straddling high academic achievement without us putting undue pressure on the students. That was the one thing my wife and I could agree on. We don't want our kids to go into school and just be stressed out all day. Number one reason. I think that makes Concord unique. Both my kids, they are great academically, but they have aptitude in arts, they have aptitude in sports. This town, I think, does a great job of making sure all of them have opportunity to succeed. And as long as we continue to do that, I think we stay unique.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was our last question, so we're ready for closing statements. And we're going to go reverse order from the way we started. So Michael, 1 minute to you.
Well, you all have a real task ahead of you. You have 3 intelligent, attractive people here. Some with straight hair, some with curly salt and pepper hair, some with some hair. But the key point is that you've heard what we bring to this and what we want to do. I want to use my skills to collaborate and communicate to bring educational excellence. I want to use my skills to communicate and collaborate to look at our data and take what we do that we do well and make it a little bit better with balance to make certain that we're not overburdening our students. Finally, I want to make certain I use my skills to bring the information from the administration to you, the constituents, and from the constituents to the administration. Thank you for the opportunity. Look at us all, think critically, vote, and vote for me, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandeep, the closing statements, 1 minute.
Excellent, thank you. It's been an honor to share the stage with my fellow candidates and obviously sharing some of my views with all of you. Over the past couple of months that I've jumped into this race, I've had the chance to meet with many folks across town. I've had the chance to ask you questions, understand what your vision is for the schools, understand what you've liked, what you haven't. And like any vibrant town, we have our share of disagreements. My commitment to you is that I will be an independent voice. I am committed to making decisions that are rooted in data. They are tempered with empathy, and they're guided by inclusivity. I come from the nation of Gandhi. I will value constructive dissent and dignified discourse. I'm determined to find common ground. I'm ready to make sure that every child in Concord thrives and can be the best that they can be. That's why I'm running for school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexa, to you.
I think I've probably said the words student achievement and mental wellness 100 times today. That is the lens through which I approach this work, and that's really it. That is my primary focus. I think for me, and why I'm asking you all for your vote, is I've only been on this committee for 4 years and some change, and it really isn't. It isn't enough. We have a really new committee, and I am committed to ensuring that our younger members really have the ability to affect change and contribute meaningfully to our policy discussions and our budget discussions. The ramp up to being a really good and effective committee member does take time. I feel like I'm hitting my stride, and I would love to continue my work to be able to steward this next generation of leadership on the school committee before I time out.
So I want to thank all 3 candidates here. Voters, you'll choose 2 of these candidates. Alexa Anderson, Sandeep Pishardi, and Michael Williams. Thank you very much. Okay, will the select board candidates come up and take a seat? Okay, it's hard, I can hear you just fine. I love this last question. I'm walking right past me. I didn't realize we had. Oh.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank
That's my name. Thank you. Those were tough. Those were tough questions. I think I'm not running for select board. I was to be in school committee, right?
Oh, I have my water bottle down there, thank you.
I think we're good. Thank
Hey,
you.
more.
Oh, actually, do you want more?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Sorry.
More.
There you go.
I'd like more, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, say again, Stephanie? Got it.
Like, okay.
They're having a hard time hearing.
Felt that
They're having a hard time
it was a little too
hearing.
soft in the back,
Okay.
and we were wondering if there was an issue with the microphone, so just if you can.
Hello. Does that work?
Well,
Testing.
no, we'll see.
I was having a hard time hearing, and I was right there.
Test.
Sort of pointing to the air and
Test.
Okay. All right. The microphone sounded a little soft. Or the speakers were soft.
Yeah.
Is this a live mic?
I think
If you can all take your seats, please.
Yeah.
you and my husband. This is yep. Sometimes I don't believe him because he can speak.
Okay, let's get started with the select board so we can get to all the questions.
Those guys are.
If everyone can get seated
Oh my gosh.
or standing
Yeah, I know.
wherever you have a little home here. Okay, I just wanted to remind you, if you have questions for the select board, there are index cards to write your questions down, sort of wave them around, and the team up here will review them. Okay? All right, so thank you all for staying, being here, joining us now. We have 4 candidates for 2 seats on the select board. Our candidates are Mary Hartman, Elizabeth Akehurst Moore, Paul Boehm, and Joseph Lauren. Okay, so we are going to do the same format we did last time. We'll start with 1-minute opening statements, questions that all the candidates will answer, 1 minute each, and then closing statements for a minute. And we'll have time for a few audience questions as well, so be sure and get them in. All right, so we're going to start in, I don't have enough. It's interesting. We'll start in alphabetical order with Elizabeth first. 1 minute to you.
Should I test this mic first? People said it wasn't loud enough. Is it?
Can
good?
everyone hear in the back?
You can hear? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And again, it is great to see so many people here. Quick autobiography, so you know where I'm coming from. I was raised across the border all the way in Lincoln, but I did come to Concord to go to Concord Academy. I moved away to get my undergraduate degree, my master's degree, came back to Boston to get a law degree. Tolerated working in a big law firm in Boston for as long as I could, which was about 3 years. Moved back to Concord to open Trails End Cafe. In 2018, I opened Concord Market. My first time serving on a town committee was 2014. I was on the town governance committee, which I just remembered was we were the ones who came up with changing it to select board. So I'm happy to see that from selectmen. Thank you. Two terms on the zoning board of appeals, and I'm currently serve on the MCI advisory committee, where I am chair of the legal and government affairs subcommittee. And that was a minute. So.
It goes by fast. It definitely does. All right. Thank you, Paul. 1 minute to you.
Thank you and welcome everybody. I've been a proud Concord resident for over 48 years.
My wife, Ellen, and I moved to Concord to enjoy the resources of this unique town and to raise our family. Our 3 children attended Concord public schools, and then my 5 grandchildren do too, giving me a three-generation perspective on the town's challenges and opportunities. As an environmental scientist and an oceanographer and a business professional, I've spent long career hours solving complex problems through collaboration, open-mindedness, and data-driven solutions. I brought that same approach to my town service on multiple town committees, including 3 different 2229 committees, the Recreation Commission, Community Preservation Committee, and the Warners Pond Task Force. Through this work, I've gained a deep understanding of the town governance and the importance of fresh ideas, leadership, and teamwork. I'm running for the Select Board to confront the challenges and to help realize the opportunities to ensure Concord remains a unique and vibrant community for the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mary, the opening statements, 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm going to use my time to answer the question, why am I running for re-election? And my answer is straightforward. I want to continue the work that we're doing together. Here are some of the things that I initiated while I've been the chair. First, we impaneled the MCI Advisory Board that will make recommendations to the town and the Select Board about the future of that parcel. We're developing a land use matrix working group to advise the Select Board and the town on how the best use of other available lands coming to the town. We're especially interested in where to site a new DPW and a public safety facility. We improve communication and cooperation between the school committee, the finance committee, and the Select Board by hosting 3 joint meetings, which I feel is helping us avoid a repeat of last year. We're coming to town meeting all within guideline. And finally, we're exploring new revenue streams through a pilot program and a fresh look at commercial development to diversify our tax base. This role enables me to connect in a way that's meaningful. Thank you.
You'll have time to talk about some of these
Okay.
things as we go forward. Joseph, 1 minute to you, please.
Thank you. My guess is everyone's here today because we love this town and we feel that we have some challenges and opportunities in front of us that need addressing. Me too. So let me just mention a couple of quick things. Number one, I'm really invested in this town. My wife and I raised our sons here. They went to the public schools. I've volunteered countless hours in town. A lot of that focused here and regionally on education, which is really important to me. Number two, I'm an engineer by training. I also have a master's in business. I understand the power and importance of data and data-driven solutions. And as well as, by the way, I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel every time we do something. We can learn from other communities who've tackled the same things. I also say that I'm a business leader, which means yes, input, yes, diverse input and perspectives, but at some point we need to make decisions, fact-based decisions, but we need to make a decision, and I would say cell service is one of those we've kicked down the road far too long.
Okay, our first question, thank you. Paul, you're going to go first.
Sure.
If elected to the Select Board, what changes to the town will you work hardest to make during your tenure?
Changes to the town. I think we have incremental improvements to the town and big opportunities to take advantage of. Changes on the Select Board, for example, are big communication changes. I think the Select Board needs to communicate more what they do and the important issues to the town. I would like to see the Concord Bridge have a weekly article in what the Select Board is doing. So I think communication is a big thing that I would work on. Budget process is pretty good right now, but we have challenges ahead. And I think the Select Board needs to play as a more active role, more frequently looking at the town budget. And then I think I would look at coordination across the town. Coordination between business units, coordination between the Select Board and the schools. I think there's a lot of opportunity to be had in coordination and communication across our silos. So I'd be dedicated to breaking down those silos. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question to Joe.
Yeah, I think I would mention two things that sort of come to my mind. Number one is I think we need to expand the tax base in town. I'm a realist. I don't think we're going to lower our taxes and our costs. It's certainly not dramatically across the board, but there is a way for us to bring in commercial business into town diversify our tax base so it's not completely reliant on residential taxes. We can bend that cost curve. We all know the projection of 8% a year for the next 5 years is not sustainable. We can bend that by, in part, no magic solutions here, in part by bringing more commercial business in. The other thing I'll say, which is I really think we need to turn the temperature down on the discourse in town. The last couple of years, there've been a change in that I think has not been healthy. There have been a couple issues that have been healthy. And I would say I will take the lead on helping bring that discourse down to a better level that's constructive for all.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, a question to you. Sorry. I'm rotating the order, so.
All good points that you made. When I started running, when I decided to run, there were some issues that I had in the top of my mind. Cell service is one, budget is another, growing commercial base, since I am a business owner in town, kind of understanding all of that. But what I have been struck with, and I think both of you mentioned it, is an animosity between people in town, between different groups, which to me is shocking. I have 4 kids. My youngest is 5. I have older parents who have mobility issues. To me, we should all be getting along. It should not be a school committee versus select board discussion. It should be, we are in town together, let's all work together. So I would say civil discourse is a big one for me, and approaching decision-making with facts and reason.
Thank you. Okay, Mary.
Thank you. I believe that we do have healthy disagreements within town, between the select board and the school committee. I'm on the select board. We agree on things, we disagree on things. I think that is part of civil discourse. To call that animosity, I think, is an exaggeration. That's not helpful. I believe that we have different priorities, so it's only natural and healthy, actually, that we would be talking like that. Originally, my answer to this question was I think we need a healthy middle within this town. I think we're doing a lot of work around affordable housing at the low end. The high-end market will take care of itself. If one thing I learned in political science in college was you need a healthy middle if you want a healthy democracy. I'm a big advocate of more workforce housing, more diverse housing stock. That means both some tax relief programs to help people stay in an affordable home, and also funding at the workforce level.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mary, you're up first for the next question.
Oh.
So, imagine it is the year 2035. The land development opportunities such as the MCI site, 2229 Main Street, and Peabody have been developed along with other changes that are currently under discussion in town. Suppose that everything you had advocated for in the select board was accomplished. Describe the biggest differences between your best version of Concord in 2035 and where we are today.
Okay, I'm going to repeat what I just said, which is I think we need a healthy middle. I feel us moving apart, and I think that these particular parcels have a really good opportunity for us to have another village, a more diverse tax base, so that in fact if we have a more diversity of housing stock, a more diversity along all the dimensions, not just income, not just race, not just age, but that we have a more diverse community. And I think we would also invest in our infrastructure and in some of our public services that we have not been investing in the last few years while we've been building our schools. So I would like to see a new DPW facility, a public safety facility, and better infrastructure.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, a question to you.
So the first thing that comes into my mind, because I'm on the MCI advisory committee, is the MCI site and my pie in the sky. What would it look like in this year, 2035? I see an innovation district. I think it would be amazing to have some sort of combination of maybe a university satellite campus, some tech incubators, some affordable housing, all done kind of with a green progressive kind of, I don't know what just happened there, ethos. Yes, we're saving electricity already. But I think that I see MCI as being a real chance for us to do something creative, forward-thinking, help increase the commercial tax base, and bring some different people into town. So my pie in the sky vision would be seeing that in 2035.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, the question to you.
Sure. So I'll say ditto to what Elizabeth just said. I think MCI,
You're not kidding about
it's
saving
not me, I
electricity.
promise. Is this on now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the MCI is a big part of this, but I think we need to be realists. It's not the magic bullet that's going to solve all of our problems. It can be a big part of that, but it's only a part of it. We have other opportunities for development that we can also look to. My vision, 2035, I would say, and I'm sorry, I would maybe disagree with someone who disagreed with a word I used. I think the animosity thing has been real here. I've watched some of these meetings, and I would say I'd really love to see that being really cooperative. The latest FinCom and school board meeting has been a great example of how we can do that, and we'll come to town meeting with an agreed plan that doesn't need a vote. We will not have an override in 2030 by 2035. And importantly, we'll have this overarching plan that we can use to prioritize.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, the question to you.
I think the land opportunities that we have, I view it as sort of a palette that we're going to be painting on. And I think looking back from 2035, we will have painted a diverse palette to take care of our affordable housing issues, to take care of our commercial development issues. 94% of our revenues come from residential taxes and only 6% from commercial. I think an ambitious goal would be to get that to 10%. You could probably only get that at MCI Concord. So we will have painted that palette. We will have invited new and vibrant industries like biotech, research and development. We will have satisfied our recreational aspirations. We will have learned to operate efficiently during that time. We will have looked at efficiencies across operations, and we will have patted ourselves on the back on efficiencies. And that's about it.
That's all. Okay, 2035, everybody. All right, our next question. Joe, you're going to go first. Concord's DEI Commission has been in place since 2022. How do you assess its impact to date? And if elected, what more would you like to see done?
Yeah, so I guess more is probably the watchword, right? So I think that their focus, some of the things they've done have been terrific. I think the one thing I would sort of like to see more of is maybe an expansion of the focus there. I've talked to some folks who, on the Council on Aging, for example, who'd like to see, hey, we should look more to the aging population and expand focus there. Folks with disabilities, I know the amenities building at the high school has been an issue, and that I'd love to see the DEI committee fighting for that, so we have restrooms and facilities that can accommodate those who are elderly and with disabilities. So I think I would do more, and I would expand the focus so that it's actually covers more of our population and our town's needs.
Thank you. And Mary, the question to you.
I think the DEI Commission has done a great job as far as more visibility, their proclamations, the celebrations that we've had. Pride Day was a wonderful day. The Select Board has taken a more practical approach, and I would like the DEI Commission to join us with that. And our practical approach, again, is more diverse housing. If we really want diversity in town, I think we need diverse housing across all the demographics. And I agree with Joe, we need to think about diversity as far as age, income, sexual orientation. So it should be more or beyond just race. But the work they've done, I think, and the other thing I want to say is I also think the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has done a really good job of bringing the voices of people whose voices haven't been heard into our consciousness. So the voices of some of the Black people and the Indigenous people that made us who we are today. And it's important that we keep those voices part of our conversation.
Okay, thank you. Paul, the question to you.
Yes, it's no doubt that a diverse community with inclusion is a very strong community. There's a handout in the back on community sustainability, and 2 of the 5 elements deal with civic engagement and social well-being. I think the DEI Commission has done a good job at the Select Board, and others have to help them more. We have to make sure that they are included in our committees. I think, for example, the Recreation Commission appoints people to different committees. I think the Select Board should think about approaching the DEI Commission and appointing them to certain committees. I think by getting active involvement in civic engagement, I think that will advance the goals of DEI. I think it's a shared responsibility between the town and the schools with education. The Select Board needs to set a strong tone for diversity and inclusion. And I think inclusion in all aspects of civil engagement, I think, is really the key, because that will attract new people to town by virtue of who's involved in decision making.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, a question to you.
So this is a really scary time for DEI. I mean, I would be ignoring the facts if I didn't say it. I am worried about the immigrants I have working for me, how to protect them, how to protect students, how to just protect what our genuine beliefs are, that DEI is so important. I would look to the DEI Commission to help with that. I would love help with that. I need some support for my immigrant workers. I've tried to do that in the past, and I'm still trying to do that, but this is a scary time. I don't know what to tell people. I don't know what's gonna happen, and as a female-owned business that employs many people of diverse backgrounds, I feel that I kind of have to try to keep things together and have people not panic, and I would definitely appreciate some support with that from the DEI Commission.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, you're up next.
Fantastic.
All right.
Did that sound insincere?
What areas of town spending do you think can and should be decreased?
Mary's going to love me for this one. Well, let me start by saying I don't have a seat at the table yet. I'm not in the executive sessions. I don't know the facts behind everything. I've heard a lot over here about spending, how much we spend in administrative costs throughout the town. I would like a seat at the table because I do believe there are places and a lot of administrative costs that can be cut on the town side. And I always say, sorry to the school committee, you're not perfect, but I think that we need to shift away blaming everything for the schools and look a little bit more at what's going on in the town, have some rigorous analysis. I've listened to these budget presentations. There are lots of things, not knowing who has spending cards, not knowing who has cell phones, letting people take cars home. I mean, maybe we can't solve all of our problems with some of that, but someone should look at it very carefully. And if I had a seat at the table, I think I could do a good job of that.
Thank you. And Joe, the question to you.
Sure. I'm going to dodge it a little bit because I'm not going to say here are the specific places, but I was a management consultant for 14 years. My focus was on business process reengineering. This is exactly what I did for a living, is look at complex organizations and use data, benchmarking to understand where you can ask questions. So I've heard, for example, that, hey, HR has twice as many people as we're, okay, that's a good starting point. Let's ask smart questions there. There may be a very good reason why that's happening. Okay, let's move on to the next one. But I guarantee you there are places we can find across town that have opportunities for us to, again, bend that curve. Are we going to reduce costs and taxes? Probably not, but we can bend that cost curve. Just an example, our town's expenses over the last 6 years have gone up 74%. The school's only 45%, and all other 52%. By the way, inflation 32% in that same time period.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, the question to you.
Yeah, I'm going to respond to some of those numbers that we heard. I'm not sure that I haven't seen the details behind those numbers, and I'm not sure they're audited numbers. But I want people to be aware that there are a large category of costs within town that are called joint costs that are shared between the school and the town, and they include things like health insurance, like retirement benefits, and they also include the payments we make on the bonds that we've issued to pay for our debt. So if you include those costs, it'll show a different picture than we just heard. So I want you to be aware of that. And if you wanted to look at audited statements, I'm sure they're available. I'm going to answer your question now. It's hard to cut costs without cutting services, but I do believe that we do have opportunities to make efficiencies and some process reengineering and still provide the services that we have. The problem is we have to do it while we're flying a plane. So we're rebuilding the plane while we're flying it, but I think we can do it.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, the question to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm mindful of the job of the select board as of the town's executive committee. I think we set policies and we have ideas and we have influence, but we have to rely on the town manager for suggestions how to be more efficient. I think we have to sit down with the town manager and with the school superintendent and say, look, you have to come next year with plans for efficiency along with your budgets, and let them make those decisions. We can make suggestions where those cuts should be made, but I think we should rely on the town manager and the departments to understand where those cuts can be made. As far as the head count in the town, there are 260 individuals on town staff. You have to realize that about 200 plus of them are external facing, provide service to you, library, council on aging, et cetera. So a small percentage of those are administrative. So there may be trimming on the administrative side, but we have to look very seriously at the other sides as well. And I think the town manager and the superintendent on the other side, with the school committee, are best shaped to suggest those reductions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting a signal of a rebuttal.
And
It
then
seems
I
to
was
me
looking
like
at
there
the-
might be a little more deep discussion needed. So we're going to go in the same order and everyone gets another 30 seconds. So Elizabeth, why don't you go next?
I have a little difference of opinion with you in the role of the select board vis-a-vis the town manager. To me, the select board is the town manager's boss. So of course, listen to the town manager, have them collect information, but then I think critically analyze the suggestions a little more than I'm hearing you say that. So I think it's up to the select board to come in with their own creative solutions as well and present those. So that's just my rebuttal.
Okay, Joe, 30 seconds?
I agree with that. The select board has to lead the way. They have to ask the tough questions. Yes, they have to partner with the town manager, but also I sat down with the chair of the FinCom the other day and asked some of these same questions. Do we have the resources? Can we work together to poke at these things and understand where there might be opportunity? We can absolutely do that, and I think the select board has to take the lead.
Okay, thank you. Mary, 30 seconds to you.
Yes, I think we need to understand that our town charter gives our town manager quite a broad level of authority. So the select board, yes, we write the job description, we do the evaluation, but our town charter is one where we have a town manager, not an administrator. But does that mean we should ask tough questions? We absolutely should. I agree.
Okay, and Paul.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the town manager has the final say, but I'm saying, and I've managed large organizations, and I asked all the managers to provide budgets and provide lots of input, and then I take that input and I'll digest it. I think the select board with the FinCom has to digest all the information, but I think the town manager knows the operations quite well. I think we have to analyze the data. I'm not saying we don't, but I think we have to be mindful of the different roles and responsibilities in town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul, you are up next. This next question. And it's a bit of a flip side. Are you in favor of payment in lieu of taxes levied on nonprofit organizations that own real estate in town as a way of raising revenues? Are there other alternatives as well for raising revenue that you prefer? That's to you. Yeah? To you, Paul.
Well, absolutely. The pilot program, which has been underway for a while, which is now just getting reinvigorated by Anthony Ansaldi, has the potential for raising $1 to $2 million worth of revenues. The select board has to really set that bar because we have we have discretion of the taxable real estate, whether we take 100% of that taxable real estate and ask for contributions or 25% or 50. But it's a collaborative effort. It's not mandatory. And it's teamwork with Middlesex, it's teamwork with Concord Academy, it's teamwork with the banks and religious institutions. We have to sit down and act as a team and impart the knowledge that we really need their help. So I think there are revenues to be gained from a pilot, definitely so. There are revenues to be gained from commercial development, which I hope we get back into. So there are lots of ways to increase the revenues in town.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, the question to you next.
Yes, I agree. In fact, the policy to reinvigorate the pilot program came from the select board, and we're asking Anthony to implement it. But the policy actually came from the select board. And it's asking our not-for-profits to pay for the 25% of our budget that is services that they use, such as police, fire, and the DPW. So we're simply asking them to pay for their fair share of the services. And in fact, some of our not-for-profits rely quite heavily on our public safety services. So it's 25% on average, but if you really went and did a closer look, it might be more than that. So I really think it's only fair. And the way we're approaching it is to ask them to start small with a small payment in lieu of taxes with an agreement to hopefully grow that in subsequent years. But I think that's a hopeful, we're looking at about $1.5 to $2 million per year.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, the question to you next.
Yes, so $1.5 or $2 million a year is real money to me, right? Yep. So we should absolutely do that. But as I've said before, I'm a realist. There's no magic bullet. That is one of the things that we should be pulling a lever on, absolutely. But we can't count on it. We can't count on just MCI, but we can bring in more commercial business to town that can bring in more revenue. And if it's the right business, by the way, it can bring in more revenue without really being a heavy load on the town services like the schools. I think we have to look at tourism. It brings in outside revenue. I know that that's probably a double-edged sword. It brings traffic and other issues, but there are lots of things here that, again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look to what other towns do and make sure that we make some smart decisions that are right for Concord.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, the question to you.
Sure. So I agree. I'm in favor of the pilot program. I think it's time to get it moving along. We've talked a little bit about expanding the commercial base. As someone who owns small businesses and had a restaurant and kind of still has a restaurant, I would love it if I could say, bring in 20 more restaurants and we'll solve all the problems. I don't think it's realistic. I think that we need to think a little bit differently about what we mean when we the commercial base, as we've been talking about, tech innovation hub, the tech innovation hub, just high tech in general. Something that we could, again, I'm going to say, I know you want to say 2229 Main, which is also something else on the table, but MCI Concord is a real opportunity.
Okay, thank you. We're going to switch to some audience questions. There are a lot here for me to go through, so I'm trying to quickly go through them. So let's start with this one. Mary, you're going to go first. Okay. How would you work to ensure people of color feel welcome in Concord?
The stories that we tell, the things we celebrate, the flag policy that we initiated this year, I hope makes people of color feel more welcome. The stories we tell in our tourism and our walking tours, and I'm back to housing. I think if we have more housing, more affordable housing, more workforce housing, we will welcome people that might not feel welcome now.
Okay, thank you. And Elizabeth, the question to you.
Sure. Again, I talked about what I'm doing in my own business. This is a real question for me because I have minorities working for me who have had terrible things said and done to them. I feel like it's my job, as I also said, to make people feel comfortable and protect them. And if it means kicking out someone, I have had to do it. I think we need to spread that message across the town. I think we all believe in that. So in my own life, the way that I do that is with the people who who work for me and who are friends of mine. I think, as I'm starting to think about just off the cuff, it would be great to have some sort of group with, with some other workers, some people from other workplaces who could join together and try to come together and talk about difficulties in Concord.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, the question to you.
I think historically, from the outside world, Concord is not known as a welcoming community. It's known as a white community. I think we think otherwise in town. I think we have a communication gap, and I think we need to reach out to the larger community with the success stories from the DEI Commission, the celebrations, the flag policy. So I think there's an external communication that's really important to achieve this. The other part I mentioned a bit earlier, I think the integration of people of color into our governance, into our day-to-day activities, so that part of decision-making, people of color running for candidates for the select board. We've seen that in the school committee. So I think more candidates involved, more people involved in government, and that reputation will then flow down. This is not something that's going to change our reputation overnight, but I think all these little actions are going to help us move the needle towards a more welcoming community from the outside world.
And Joe, the question to you.
Yeah, so I think one thing is I think we'd have zero tolerance for anything that makes people feel unwelcome, period, right? Anything that's scribbled on a wall or said in, zero tolerance for that. So that sort of, I'm not sure that makes people welcome, but it certainly makes them know that they're certainly not welcome, if that makes sense. I also think we should, as I mentioned about DEI in general, I think we should expand the definition, not people of color, but folks of different religion, folks of different sexual orientation should all feel comfortable walking down the streets and living and working in this community. And I do agree that, the stories that we're telling, the more that we can celebrate folks of color or of different orientations or religions and how they've succeeded here and contributed to our community. Listen, I'm not an expert in this area, but those are the things that come to my mind. But I think we have a DEI committee. Let's leverage them to help us understand that better.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, you're up next for this, you're up first for this next question. Ready?
I'm all warmed up.
How can we maintain smaller private homes so that they are not all replaced by oversized new houses?
Can I pass on it?
I don't know why everyone's laughing, so. But.
Wait, smaller private homes. Well, I think that we can do that through zoning. I'm sorry, I honestly am not an expert in this area, but here's some ideas. We can do that through zoning. We can do that through infilling. We don't always have to expand, right? We can infill, and those would typically be smaller private homes if we do infill. I do think that we have to look at tax relief. We've talked about that a little bit, and I think that if that helps with that, that could be as well. But again, I think the key here is, I may be off, but is making sure the zoning and that we're working with the right developers who are not always in, and listen, I live in a neighborhood that's a real mix of larger homes and the original Kates. They're terrific neighborhoods. I would like to promote that, and I think working with developers who have similar goals would be helpful.
Thank you. Paul, question to you next.
Yeah, the right to build, somebody owns a property and has a house, they want to tear it down and build another house. The town doesn't have total control over that other than through the planning board and the site plan. And we have to make sure that it is compliant with all of that. I think the zoning won't take care of that, but in areas like in town with the MBTA zoning that encourages smaller homes on smaller pieces of property. I think encouraging homeowners to build separate apartments for aging relatives is another way to kind of avoid replacing one house with a bigger house. But when property transactions take place, we have limited ability to control that other than through the planning process, as long as they're compliant with wetlands and other bylaws.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
It's a challenge. Preserving smaller private homes is hard because the value of the land underneath it is so valuable that a developer would come in and make more money by tearing it down. So what we need to do is we need to help the people stay in those homes to begin with. We've got some tax relief programs for seniors. Many of these homes are homes for seniors. We have some tax relief programs. We have a tax relief study committee right now looking at other alternatives that might be available. We're constrained by laws. We can only adopt laws that are already mass general laws, but we can do the research to find out what are the tools available to us out there that we can use to help people stay in their homes.
Thank you. And Elizabeth?
This is something we face all the time on the zoning board when people would come in and want to tear down a small house, and everyone would be in an uproar and say, we don't want a bigger house here. And the problem is there's private property rights. And as Mary said, the property is worth a lot of money. Didn't mean that we agreed with it, but it just meant that it's a real issue, and I wish I had the solution for it. We have moved forward with the ADU, accessory dwelling units, that have made things a little easier. The state has eased up on those restrictions even further, so we'll see what that does. And then, part of me thinks, how are we making it, and people may not agree with this, how are we making it hard for developers? It is really hard to get things done in this town, and sometimes people give up and leave. So I kind of think we need to look at what is getting in people's way beyond just taxes.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, you're up first for this next question.
Great.
Your thoughts on the residential tax exemption?
Sure. So obviously this is something that's come up a lot as I've started campaigning, and I am willing and want to see all the data, and I want to see if the assumptions that this is helping people stay in their homes and not get kicked out is correct. And if it's correct, then fantastic. Then we've done the right thing. I do not like, in general, the idea of just doing something and seeing how it works out. I think we're smarter than that we should have done some data collection in advance before we just put it in and see how it worked out. But I am always willing to follow the data. So I'm very interested in seeing if it is working.
Thank you. And Joe, the question to you.
Yeah, I stood in this room when the first RTE was passed and said that I thought the objectives and the goals were those that we should buy into, but that the RTE, I should have trademarked this. I said that the RTE was a blunt instrument because I don't think that the value of someone's home is necessarily indicative of how much they can afford to pay in taxes. I had a woman call me right after that and said, hey, listen, my husband and I have been here for 40 years. We're both retired. Our home has increased in value. We're now going to be hit with a little extra tax because of the RTE. Our taxes now exceed our gross income. We don't need that. So I think we should find, and I know it's tricky, none of this is easy, we should find a way to understand the need to pay, the ability to pay, and tweak our tax relief in that manner, not just with this blunt instrument.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, the question to you.
The platitude is that the RTE is a blunt tool. We've heard that. Everybody has said that, and it is. But it's one of the only tools that we have in the Massachusetts general law. But it's a starting point. I'm in favor of keeping the RTE if it proves out to, the data proves out to be helping people. And if it proves out to be perhaps not helping people who don't need it. I think we need to improve it. I think we have a new tax relief task force that's looking into that, and they're going to study the data. I am not going to make a conclusion on 1 year of data. That's all we have. We need 2 or 3 years of data to see if it's working, how it's working, and how to adjust it. The select board has some discretion how to adjust it, but it's not an income-based or an asset-based program. I wish it were. We should think about a home rule petition to possibly change that. But right now it's a property-based tool. There are other tools available. Massachusetts General Law 59.5C1/2. There's another level of exemptions that we could overlay on that. So I don't think we're through on tax relief, but RTE is a good starting point.
Thank you, Paul. And Mary, to you.
I understand that there are many people that are upset about the RTE. I also know that there are many people that are thrilled with the RTE. That's why we set up the task force. We wanted to have observable data, not predictive data. That's why we enacted the RTE, hoping that within 3 years we would have real observable data rather than a model that someone had put together. We will have that. We're also looking at other alternatives, and as I mentioned earlier, we're restricted to what's already out there in Mass General Law. One of those is something that would look at income and asset limits, which is a little bit, I think, would have more participation than we currently have with our current senior means tested tax exemption. So there are other alternatives to us, and we also will have enough time to collect data to find out, is the RTE doing what we hoped it did, which is to get a more diverse housing base within Concord.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have our last question, and I wanted to apologize to all the people who submitted questions that we haven't been able to get to. It's a time issue, so thank you for submitting them. Okay, so our last question, we're going to start with Paul first. What question hasn't been asked yet that you'd like to answer? So make your own question. So something you came here that you really wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet.
Good one. Let me think about that.
The question
One of your
was,
supporters, isn't it, Paul?
what question hasn't been asked yet that you'd like to answer? The person wrote, please ask and answer it, exclamation mark.
Thank you. I've thought of one. And it's back to the theme of on opportunities and land use and land use planning. Of course, I've been involved a lot for the 2229, but that's one of 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 properties in town. We talked about visioning. What do we want to look back on? I want to look back on we've had a process that takes into account all of these properties. We have a good process at MCI Concord. I think we need to, and we have an A team working on that, and I think we need to learn from that process and apply that across the board. But I think we have to do this multi-site planning, which includes municipal uses. We haven't talked about fire, police, and DPW. Those are important capital-rich projects. So we have a task before us, and I'd like to set up that process across all of these entities that really works, and so we can kind of land these opportunities at the right place at the right time and generate the right revenues and generate the right affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, to you.
Can I use 2? No, I'll take 1. Okay. I would like to hear the question about what are we doing about our infrastructure? Okay, because we know we have a wastewater capacity issue. We know we have PFAS in our water. So what are we doing about that? Our infrastructure connects everything we want to do. If we want to do housing, we need infrastructure. If we don't want to do commercial development, we need infrastructure. It connects everything we want to do in the next 20 years. And I think we've got things in place to address that. One is, that in this year's town meeting, we're going to have an article that will help us catch up on some of the road maintenance we're doing that we've been avoiding or neglecting for years. We can get caught up on that. We need good roads. We're also looking at getting increased wastewater capacity at the MCI site. We know that they have some capacity. We're working with them. We're talking with them frequently to get that transferred to the town on terms that are favorable to the town. We're working on water. We're thinking of joining the MWRA. That will take years, and I'm out of time.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, to you.
So why don't we have a cell tower yet that covers the center of town? And what can we do to change that? This has been something that has frustrated me, and I know many people as a citizen and a business owner, because it makes things tough. I think that enough is enough. We have had our public safety officials tell us that this is an actual danger to not be able to get called back on a secure line to their stations. And this is where, again, I disagree with the idea that the town manager comes with suggestions and the select board just is there to listen to them. The select board needs to be guiding this much more strongly. And I think there have been some missteps, which again, I haven't been at the table for to totally know what they were, but I think that they need to take a stronger position and get the cell tower built that covers the center of town.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, last question to you.
So Elizabeth stole my answer.
I knew you would steal it.
So, because I do think that's a really important one and an obvious one. So here's the other one is I'd like someone to say, how do we know? So how do we know how much we should be spending on something? How do we know that we should be tackling number 25 on our to-do list we don't have in my opinion, we don't have that master plan. I'll go back to my management consulting experience again. We would work with a company to understand their vision, understand the goals they would have to achieve to reach that vision, and then the sub-goals below that, right? So here are the activities that will get you to those goals. Here's what those activities are going to cost. Who's going to do them? Who's going to do those tasks? How are we going to measure whether or not they're getting there? And that allows you to say, here are our list of priorities. We don't all agree necessarily on everything, but it helps guide the decisions we make. And I feel, especially at town meetings sometimes, we go after the shiny thing and we don't look at this priority list that we should have.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go to closing statements, which are reverse order from the way we started. So Joe, you take it away. 1 minute, please.
So I'll go back to my opening, which is I believe everybody's here because we love this place and we care about what's going on and we think there's some challenges and opportunities. I would say that I bring some particular skills and experiences that are needed at this moment. This thing about looking at data and analysis, but not analysis paralysis, making sure we have the input and then we move on things like the cell towers. I can promise fact-based driven decision-making and problem solving. I will also work to lower the temperature of the discourse in town. And I think that if you look at the way some of us are cooperating ahead of the election, you can see that we can achieve that. And I would also, so the last thing I would say is, and this is a little bit of a litmus test, if you believe we are on the right path now, we've been making the right progress over the last few years, then I don't think you should vote for change. But if you believe we need change and we need a new path, then I would suggest you vote for change.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, to you.
Sure. Town government is exceptionally complex. For example, we have 65 boards and committees, which means we have over 400 citizens in town that are dedicating their time, energy, and skill to make this a better place. I celebrate that. I don't discourage that. I think that is a testament to the inclusivity. It makes life harder for us, but it goes with the territory. The other important thing that you need to understand when you're on the select board is that we're an independent board. We communicate and we cooperate with other boards. Other boards have their lines of authority, but we remain independent. We have to understand how things work if we're going to make positive change. The learning curve is steep. Experience matters. I have the experience, I have the energy. I'm competent and I'm confident that we can continue to do the work that we're doing together, and I hope I've earned your vote.
Thank you. And Paul, to you.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today. I've learned a lot during my 18 years of town service, a lot about the town, and during this campaign about the job. And this is a job. This is going to be a tough job. I've learned about the community and town government. I'm an independent thinker. I'm running an independent campaign. I'm not aligned with any other candidate. And I'm not and will not be beholden to any group or individual. I have no agenda. I'll examine each individual carefully, thoroughly, and objectively. I'll work for the entire town. Given my town service and the results I've already delivered, my experience, my proven skill set, my work ethic, I'll be ready on day one to begin work with the select board and the team to tackle the problems and the opportunities. Importantly, I'll bring my extensive environmental business experience and knowledge and relationships with EPA. We're gonna have to deal with EPA for wastewater permitting, for negotiations with land acquisition. I've worked with those people. I ask for your vote. I promise that you will be rewarded with my commitment, my dedication, my high energy, and results to benefit all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Elizabeth.
Thank you for having us. It's a really impressive group of people that I'm up here with, which is one of the reasons I love Concord. It challenges me, and we're a really smart group of people. Why I think, as I keep saying, a seat at the table, why should I have a seat at the table? I think I have some unique qualifications that would be useful to the town. I have my legal background, which has been very valuable to me on the committees that I've served on. I have a background in real estate and finance law. I have a background I've done pro bono asylum law. There's lots of places where this helps me. I have a business background. There is not a committee or a permitting authority in town, which I have not had to appear in front of, I say with a smile. So yes, town government is very complex, and I get it. I have 4 children here, and I have a lot of experience on boards. And I was raised by a mother who was president of the League of Women Voters in Lincoln and on the state board, and she has encouraged civic participation, and that's what I'm doing.
So I want to thank these candidates for putting themselves forward. Voters will vote for 2. We have Elizabeth Akers Moore, Paul Bohm, Mary Hartman, and Joe Lauren.
I'm going to vote for all 4 of us.
So if you could just hold on for 3 minutes, 3 more minutes. I know you've been really patient with this. I think we want to thank Sue Flycobb also for her moderation today. We are so lucky to have the candidates that we have, and we have this very hard vote coming up on April 8th. We know that these are unpaid positions, and the fact that we get people to work this hard is amazing. Oh, whoops. The vote by mail is available as of tomorrow in the town and will be mailed to you if you have already filled out your application for it, but it is also available in the town office. If you like events like this is this is just the sweet spot of the League of Women Voters, but we also do a ton of programming at the Concord Free Public Library. First Fridays upcoming are all of our reviews of the articles on the warrant. That are deep discussions about them, not just talking head. So please join us for those. And join us, join the League. You get your Monday member news and you know what's going on all the time. You can also find out whatever you want on our website, of course. I want to thank Minuteman Media for just always being there for these events and making it available to us. I want to particularly thank, there were 3 Concord Carlisle High School students helping us today, our next generation of voters. And all the volunteers. This is very much a big group effort, so we really appreciate it. If you want to talk more with the candidates, there are some refreshments, and you can ask them those questions that we didn't get to. We apologize we didn't get to them all. March 18th, Concord Can at 8 a.m. At 8 a.m. at First Parish is having a discussion with the candidates. March 25th, Council on Aging Forum is going to be at Harvey Wheeler at 1 p.m. And March 26th, the DEI Commission Candidate Forum. They're going to be exhausted by the end. At the Concord Free Public Library at 5 p.m. Thank you all for coming. You're the ones we do it for.